Hello, everyone, and welcome to Engineering Student Stories, brought to you by the University of Alberta. My name is Alexis, and I'm a student recruiter with the Faculty of Engineering. And today we are going to hear from five wonderful panelists who will share stories of their experiences within engineering. And then you'll have the opportunity at the end to ask any and every question that you have about anything that they've shared or your experience, what you can anticipate as your experience in the University of Alberta. You'll notice that the chat function has been disabled. If you send something in the chat, it will come directly to myself and our panelists, but we do have our Q&A function. So if you utilize the Q&A function, then you'll be able to ask us your questions. We'll save them all for the end, but then we'll have them all in one place. So thank you in advance. I would like to start by acknowledging that the University of Alberta has three campuses, and they span across Treaty 6, 7, and 8 territory. So this is the traditional territory of the Cree, Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, and Ojibwe, Saulteaux, and Anishinaabe nations. And I'm not sure if all of you are based out of Edmonton, but lately Edmonton got a huge dump of snow. So it is a reminder of the force of natures that exist and just how important it is that we continue to care for this land and respect those that have cared for this land long before we have. So as I mentioned, we're going to be starting off with our panelist presentations, and then we'll be moving into a question and answer period in which you'll be able to use that Q&A function and ask us any questions that you have. And then I'll chat a little bit about some upcoming recruitment events and some important dates. So with that being said, we are going to jump right into it because we're here to talk about engineering, but we haven't actually established what engineering is. So at the University of Alberta, we like to consider engineering as turning thinking into doing. You can take any outlandish idea that you have, and we'll give you the skills and the opportunities to turn it into a reality and be able to utilize all of your knowledge to turn any crazy concept into something tangible. And that's exactly what these students have been able to do through their experiences. So we are going to be getting started with Lyndon.
Hi guys. My name is Lyndon and I'm a fourth year software engineer and I'm doing co-op here at U Alberta. You can go ahead and switch the slide. Yeah, so I was born in Calgary and I graduated high school in 2020 and then I came to U of A right after that. Part of the reason that I chose U of A was, first of all, for the student spirit. U of A has such a vibrant campus and it's really just it's buzzing with first year activities, things that you can get involved with on campus in so many different ways, whether or not you're doing engineering. So that's just first and foremost one of the things that steered me towards U of A. And then the major thing for me was the general first year of engineering. Because even if you aren't sure exactly what you want to do and you're disciplined within engineering, U of A lets you have that choice in your first year where you get experience with so many different courses that are in civil, mechanical, computer, and then you can make your decision from there. And so that was really beneficial for me because I didn't know what I wanted to do until after I'd taken a couple classes and realized what I liked and what I wanted to do from there. I ended up going with computer engineering software, and that led me to do some pretty cool co-ops. So I got to, through the co-op office, I got to do a really cool experience working with a Formula Student Racing team based in Germany. And with them, I was able to go for 8 months. I traveled over to Germany and I was working with a team of about 60 other undergraduate engineers to compete in races all over Europe during the summer. And that was so eye-opening for just where engineering can take you and where co-op through the U of A can take you as well. There are some clubs like that at U of A though. There's a Formula Student Racing company or team at U of A. It's the Formula FSAE team. And so right here at U of A, you can work on a team of about 40 to build a race car that competes in Michigan every year. And it's a really cool experience. There's another panelist in here, Eric, actually, who will go so much more into detail about the Compy Club, but it's another student organization that I've interacted with one of the most. And they put on events that like hackathons where you can boost your resume with really cool projects and recruiting opportunities where you can meet companies through sponsorship for these events. You can talk to recruiters. So there's so many cool ways that you can get involved with industry through the engineering program here at U of A. A couple tips for incoming students about engineering is the scheduling. Like you will have to devote so much of your weekly calendar to it, but it gets really cool when you get involved in it. When you have your time devoted to being in engineering, you eat, sleep, and breathe engineering. It's really cool. But you have to kind of let it take on its time in your calendar, which is amazing. About me, one of my parts of Edmonton that I really love is you're really close to White Ave, where you can, there's so many cool food spots. If you're a foodie whatsoever, I could recommend Edmonton. And U of A campus is right in a perfect spot for all those things. So on the next slide, I have some pictures that kind of, yeah, so these are some of the cool things that I've got to do, kind of some examples that I've touched on earlier through the engineering program. So on the left there, that was on the way to my co-op in Germany. I actually got to sit in the cockpit of a Boeing 777, and that was just a really cool experience. And that was on my way to my co-op. And then there's me in the crawling up the chassis of our race car. We were actually in Spain going through, we were at the Catalunya circuit, which hosted the F1 Spanish Grand Prix not too long prior. And then there's some cool things from labs at U of A that I've done those pictures there. Those are from some ECE computer engineering labs where you're fully programming embedded systems and remote control cars. And then I also, you're close to the mountains in Alberta here, and so on breaks you can go do pretty cool stuff. So there's me skiing just this past winter break. And that's kind of my experience with U of A and some of my recommendations in a nutshell.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lyndon. And if you have any questions during any of the presentations, feel free to send them into the Q&A now so you don't forget them. We'll just address them later. It's a good place to save them. But as a huge Formula One fan, that is so cool that you got to visit the circuit. Oh my gosh.
Yes.
And next up, we have Abby. So Abby, it is the floor is yours.
Right. Yeah. So I'm Abby. I'm in my fourth year of the biomedical option of mechanical engineering at the U of A, which is a bit of a mouthful. My pronouns are she, her. And a little bit about me to start us off. I am from Lethbridge originally, so I transferred from the U of L to the U of A in 2021 as part of the engineering transfer program. So I did my first year there and then I transferred up here. I chose engineering particularly kind of due to my interest in medical innovation. I kind of was always interested in the medical field, and I started to learn how like mechanical engineering and all of the other disciplines really can have a role in medicine. I thought, yeah, so I kind of just thought that was cool. So that's how I ended up here. I chose U of A mostly because of the location. I mean, they had an agreement with the U of L in place, so I got a cheap first year because I got to live at home. But that's kind of why I chose here, but I'm grateful that I did. As part of the U of A, I'm part of the Engineering Student Society, or ESS, which is basically the student council, I guess, of the Faculty of Engineering. So within that, I have two positions. One is working with institutional outreach. Part of that is high school outreach, and then I kind of focus more so on institutional relations, so with those transfer schools like U of L. And then I also deal with equity, diversity, inclusivity, and decolonization, their platform or the EDID platform. Our primary focus there is to advocate for marginalized students and just make sure that the school and the department are doing the best that they can to kind of improve inclusivity within the environment. So although we can't really do everything, it's probably one of the things that I'm most proud of doing since coming to the U of A. Yeah. In terms of co-op experience, I've only done one so far, but I did 8 months at Red Deer Polytechnic's Center for Innovation in Manufacturing Technology Access Center, or CIMTAC, which is easier to say. I'll touch a little bit more on that on the next slide. But as for advice for new students, I would say the first thing is to just kind of get involved. It might sound a little bit counterintuitive because that takes time, but joining clubs and stuff, you build a community, and I think having those connections and making those friends actually helps like kind of deal with the overwhelming nature that engineering can occasionally be. Not that that's always bad, but I think that it can help a lot. As well as that, I think engineering is kind of seen to be a rigid kind of program where it's like you have to do this and then this and then this. So I think that it's important to know that you kind of do have options in how you're, particularly classes, I think, how you're dealing with that. I've resequenced my degree like 4 times. I was scared to do so initially, but it has been fine so far, so I think it'll be fine. But just kind of knowing that you have options if you need them. And then the next slide. So I have some pictures here. With my co-op, I couldn't take too many pictures because it was kind of working with clients. We were manufacturing and designing prototypes for them. So because they were specific clients, I couldn't take those pictures. But one of the ones of me and that blue thing right there is I got to work on a project where we were molding textile silicone discs. So I essentially got to play for a month. I was just crafting for a whole month, which was pretty exciting. The one on top there of me looking awkward is with a HoloLens, which is a augmented reality headset. It's kind of like virtual reality, but you can still see the environment. So you get less dizzy, which is great. On the right there is a picture of some 3D printed designs. It's not something that I worked a lot on, but a different co-op student worked a lot on latticing different structures using 3D printers. I think when a lot of people think engineering, they think 3D printing. So it was kind of cool that we got to use her research in a lot of different other projects as well. It was kind of learning how you could lattice to keep the structural integrity, but decrease the weight that you are using in different prototypes. The picture on the left there is my parents' dog, who I get to see occasionally, but it was really just an excuse to talk about some research that I got to do on dog elbows. So I kind of got to combine an interest of animals and biomedical engineering in that. I got to use some software that you take medical imaging and you can create 3D models with that. And then we got to print those off with the 3D printers. So we had a dog elbow sitting around for a while, which was also pretty cool. The last picture there is me eating sushi in Japan. So that was the other positive about my co-op, is that they let me go to Japan. So I went there for about 2 weeks last year, which was great because I got to see my family who I hadn't got to see because of COVID. So that was cool. Thank you guys for letting me ramble, and I hope somebody learned something. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Abby. The dog elbow thing is so cool. Oh my goodness, what a unique opportunity and a great way to be able to kind of exit the realm of what you usually think of in biomedical. So next up, we have Everett. Everett, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Everett. I'm a 5th-year civil environmental engineering student at the U of A. I use he, him pronouns, and we may go to the next slide. So I'm actually from Ontario, not Edmonton, not Alberta. but not Toronto. So don't assume that. Not everyone from Ontario is from Toronto. Though Ontario is the center of the known universe, we all just accept that. Um, I'm joking, of course. I decided to go into engineering when I was in high school, basically via process of elimination. So I share that just to say that there's nothing wrong with making decisions that way, and it has worked out quite well for me. But basically, I knew I liked math and I knew I liked science, but I didn't want to be a mathematician or a scientist. And so that sort of left engineering, at least in terms of things I was aware of as options. And that's what I did, and I've really loved it so far. I chose the U of A because I wanted to get out of Ontario. And also, I did have the opportunity to visit the campus beforehand. And just like Lyndon mentioned earlier, like the atmosphere on campus, or also like the vibes from the people, were just really positive and welcoming, even before I was a student here. And that jumped out at me relative to any of the other campuses I visited. So definitely one of the reasons why I came here and why I've enjoyed my time here at the U of A. In terms of that time, I've also been involved with the ESS, or Engineering Student Society, just like Abby. I started in a role working on research and advocacy. So I was actually advocating for different positions on behalf of students. I got to draft some policy letters that were then sent to both the university and the dean, and even one I think that was sent to the Minister of Education. So that was a pretty cool opportunity. And that's how I got started. Last year, I actually served as the Vice President of External Relations for the ESS. So I'll talk a little bit more about that with some photos on the next slide. But that was a really neat way to get involved in influence student life on campus and student experiences, and get a little bit of a more more insight in to how governance works at the university, and how all the politics and that stuff works. So it's not something I want to keep doing long term by any means, but it was really cool to learn some of that stuff. And I'm still involved with the ESS this year. I do a bunch of different things. I'm the chair of the board of directors, which is kind of a boring job, but I also manage the merch for the ESS, which is a much more fun job. So yeah, I've also done Week of Welcome volunteering ever since my second year. So basically I run campus tours and give presentations and stuff to new students. So if we've got presumably prospective students or incoming students watching this webinar right now, so I'm not doing Week of Welcome this year, but very soon, come September, you will experience a Week of Welcome and you will know what I am talking about. We can go on to the next slide. So I'm just going to talk about some of these photos to sort of share some of my experiences. The photo in the middle with the WEC balloons, that's from the Western Engineering Competition last year. So I'm very grateful to have had the opportunity to take a delegation of students to compete in the Western Engineering Competition in Vancouver last year. So as the Vice President External, myself and my co-Vice President, Vienna, we organized all the travel. We organized and ran the University of Alberta engineering competition, the winners of which got to compete at WEC. And then we even had some of our competitors win at WEC, and they went to compete at the Canadian engineering competition in Waterloo, Ontario, at the University of Waterloo. So yeah, that's something cool. The photo on the top left is from one of my co-ops. So I'm not actually in co-op, but just because you aren't in co-op doesn't mean you can't do co-ops. So I've done sort of 4-month co-ops in the summers. And that's one of them. I worked for an NGO called Water First that does environmental science training and training of water treatment plant operators in Indigenous communities specifically. So that photo was taken actually in Labrador, just across the border from Quebec. So if you think of a map of Canada and you think of Quebec, it's the upper right-hand corner of the province of Quebec is where I was. So quite remote, but the scenery out there was quite beautiful, as you can see. So I was there running an environmental science and fish habitat mapping workshop So I actually had to call back to some of my grade 11 biology, and I had to learn how to fish and dissect fish and about fish biology and fish habitat. So that was really neat. Some of my other co-ops, I've had the opportunity to work within different water treatment plants. I've been involved with some other like project groups on campus, like some of the other panelists. So the bottom left corner is a photo from this year's Great Northern Concrete Toboggan Race. I got to travel to St. John's, Newfoundland. So I have been now to Newfoundland and Labrador. So that was an achievement that I'm proud of. But basically, we design and build a toboggan that has concrete skis, and we race it down a hill against other schools. I don't want to take up too much time, so maybe we'll just go to the next slide. I'll talk about some other photos. um, I've had some other things that were less like engineering related and more just like fun on campus. So the photo from the top left, I lived in the Lister residence in Schaefer Hall my first year, and that's a photo of me playing dodgeball in the Lister Dodgeball League. So dodgeball is like really a thing in U of A residences. We joke sometimes that it's like a bit of a cult. It's really not. It's just a way that like all of the people in residence come together as a community, and we just have some fun and blow off some steam. But it's like it can be very competitive, and it's also super fun. The photo in the middle there is from the engineering first year retreat. That's me in the green U of A sweater in my first year. And then the two photos below it are from last year when I was a chaperone at the first year retreat. So sort of came full circle from participating as a first year to then leading a group of first year students last year, which was really cool. And we were team chicken tenders, which is just, I don't know, it's just funny. On the bottom left is a photo of one of my classes. We went out to the bar after the end of our classes, all as a class together, and our professor bought us all drinks. So that was super cool. Just part of the engineering community. And on the right, that's a photo from the trip to St. John's. And I won't elaborate further, but you can see that it was there's a little bit of shenanigans going on. So engineering can definitely be a lot of fun.
Well, thank you so much, Everett. It sounds like you found some really meaningful ways to give back to both the community on campus and greater communities in very rural areas. So very cool. Thank you so much. All right, next up we have Eric.
Hey everyone. Yeah, I'm Eric. I'm in my final year of computer engineering, not the software option, just the regular co-op, boring old traditional. Yeah. Yeah, we can flip to that. Yeah. So one thing I want to point out, my journey into engineering is very not linear. A lot of people kind of start right after high school. I tried, as you can see, and it kind of got there in the end. So I graduated high school 2017, and actually, way back when MacEwan used to have a transfer program, and you'd complete your first year of engineering in MacEwan's transfer program. So I did it, started there, loved it there. Great. It was a great start to my engineering career. 2018, I was a secret civvy, and I went into civil engineering in 2018. My GPA, it just wasn't high enough for computer engineering. That was it. So civil engineering was next on my pick list, and I started in it. After a semester, I realized, no, civil engineering, not for me. It's not my thing. I couldn't do it. So I withdrew. And the following semester, I went to NAIT. So I went into the computer engineering tech program. And I did 2 years there in their tech program, loved it, learned a lot, got a lot of experience on the technologist side, not the engineering side. And my GPA was finally high enough after doing the 2-year program. And it's like a transfer program style thing. And then I came back to the U of A and started the computer engineering degree in 2021. And now I'm at the end of it. And I've been here kind of ever since, and I've loved it. I've been a part of a lot of kind of student governance stuff, similar to Everett, being the president of the Compy Club this year. I ran some cool events, some hackathons, if you guys have ever heard them. This year and last year, we ran 4 of them. It's like Alberta's largest hackathon. We gave away like 30,000 in prizes. There's 500 participants that compete from all over the world. It's a complete worldwide thing, and it's super fun to be able to put on. So many sponsors and just so many cool projects but I love talking about it, and hosting them was super fun. So, and even high school students sometimes come compete too. So maybe some of you guys will be at the next Hack Ed. But uh, yeah, that's mostly it for the slide. If we can go on to the next slide, I didn't have very many exciting photos because I realized I didn't take very many photos like the rest of people did during their engineering degrees. So some of these photos you could see are some of the hardware that you work on in the computer engineering side on the right. That was, I think it was to make like little servos move with keypads and button pushes. I don't remember. It was a while ago, but I remember it looking complicated, but being pretty fun. On the right hand side is one of the physics labs that all the ECE students have to take, and it's like the small little light ring that you get in this glass tube, and by changing some parameters, you can get the ring to expand or shrink the radius. But if we go to the next slide, I have a video, and I really hope it plays. Um, one of my one of the really interesting things that I like doing a lot is robotics. So one of the courses I was looking at and I've continued with is a robotics course. So this is a little car that's actually using a PID controller. That's what keeps the ducky bot, as we call it, within the lanes. And it uses some computer vision, and it actually just drives in the lanes and goes. And I have way more complicated ones that do a bunch of other cool stuff, but it's just an easy way to show that, it stays within the lanes, and it can do lane following. And that's some of the cool stuff that I've really enjoyed during my engineering career here, and it's been awesome. So other than that, like for one thing, I do just want to remind a lot of people is that it's not a very linear path. Like mine was very all over the place. Like just because you don't go in right at the start doesn't mean you might never do. It took me what 3-4 years to finally get into even the program that I wanted to, and then I had to complete the program. So it was a great journey. It was lots of fun. I'm very happy I did it. I'm happy where I am, and especially being able to like run all these events now, and opportunities through like because I'm not in co-op either, so just 4-month summers and stuff like that, and getting to go places, and an engineering degree really opens the doors for you. And as long as you're networking and talking with people, and um, yeah, just enjoy it for what it is. It's a really fun time. So yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Those hackathons sound so cool.
They're
Oh
pretty
my
cool.
gosh. Definitely have to hear more about that later. And really impressive with the robot. Really good. Oh, all right. And then we have Georgia. So, Georgia, it's all yours.
Hello, everyone. Bear with me. My voice is a little shaky because I'm getting over a cold, but we will go on. My name's Georgia Hidson. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a fourth year mechanical engineering student at the University of Alberta. I'm in co-op, so I've had a couple co-op experiences I'm gonna talk to you guys about. But first, let's start as to why I got into engineering. So I also had the experience of I came out of high school and I was like, well, I'm good at math. I like science. What am I going to do with this? So very, very similar story of process of elimination took me to engineering. And kind of my point on that, what I want to reiterate is you don't have to necessarily have a end goal in mind when you're coming out of high school to go into a certain program. You don't have to have your life sorted out immediately. And that's kind of the fun of engineering is you get to explore a lot of different pathways before you have to necessarily confirm to one thing you want to do. And even then you can go on, switch things around, do an after degree, etc. So that's how I started. And then I came to the University of Alberta, mainly because I live in Edmonton and I'm from Edmonton. So that was a pretty easy decision for me. There's a couple other like considerations if I wanted to go to MacEwan as well, but I ended up at the University of Alberta and I'm really happy for it. I ended up going into mechanical engineering and I started co-ops. My first co-op was working at Enbridge in pipeline integrity. And what I was doing there was a lot of safety and risk management work, which I think is really, really valuable experience for anyone working in engineering because it just kind of reminds you of the responsibility you hold as an engineer, to do good work and due diligence to make sure everything is safe for people in the community. That was an 8-month co-op term that I did after my second year, or kind of in going into my third year. And then last summer, I did a co-op with Bridge to Eng, and I'm gonna do a little bit of a plug here because it's super applicable for anyone who's going to go into engineering or maybe wants to in the future. Bridge to Eng is a program we offer at the University of Alberta, and it's meant to kind of help the transition from high school into university over the summer in between. And we try and get you guys connected with other students in the community. We try to build your confidence to get ready to go into engineering, which admittedly is a bit sometimes of a tough program at times. And then we want you to be really enthusiastic about the program as well. So those are kind of the 3 main goals. I've really loved the work I've been doing there, and I've actually continued it this year. So every year we're trying to make the program better and better for students for the following semester. Outside of that, I have some interests, and actually, yes, we're able to maintain kind of sort of hobbies outside of our academic work. So I actually dance in a semi-professional company outside of the University of Alberta. So we do like projects on the side, and I'm able to kind of balance that with my workload at university. I also like to go rock climbing, kind of in the picture shown there. I shockingly am slightly scared of heights still. Like it's rather I've had to build up a lot of confidence to push myself to get to that level, but that's I think that was taken in Nordig somewhere. I can't quite remember, but yeah. Anyways, we can flip to the next slide. So these are kind of some of my experiences throughout my undergrad. My biggest piece of advice for students in engineering is make friends and like build a network of like a support team or a support system, because I can like truthfully say I would not have made it as far as I have without my support system of all my friends in engineering as well. So my first picture there is actually from the fall reading week from 2023. And my group of engineering friends and I went to Chichen Itza, which was really, really fun, really, really nice. We went to Cancun and then visited Chichen Itza, I should say, but that's my support system. So I thought that would be a good thing to highlight there. The one with me in a hard hat is me standing on I think it was a 60-foot tank in the middle of Saskatchewan. So that's one of the places we visited doing our risk assessments at my first co-op. It was really, really cool. And that was actually before I got into rock climbing. So I was a lot more scared of heights then. And I'm standing on this 60-foot tank, and it was very intimidating, but really, really cool to do as well. The next picture over of me, I don't know, you can kind of see in the background pushing a makeshift sled is one of the activities or events you can get involved with at the university. It's called Antifreeze. It's not specific to engineering. It's actually for everyone, anyone at the U of A. And we made a undergraduate team of all my friends, and we competed in a series of events throughout January last year. For that event, we had to build a sled and then pull someone in said sled around the main quad, which is a big grassy area at the University of Alberta. And then there were a couple other tasks along the way there. So that was lots of fun. And I snagged that from the UASU Instagram. You can kind of see the link in the corner there. But continuing on, the middle picture, I wanted to just show me with my awesome grandma that I get to visit every year. So on the side time of engineering, you do get some breaks, you do get some downtime. So I last summer got to go out and visit my grandparents in BC, and we do a lot of kayaking and stuff like that. So again, highlighting you can balance activities with your academics as long as I think you have a good time management situation set up for yourself. And then lastly, the picture in the bottom corner is just me with my dance crew on stage. That was from a fringe show that we did last year and the year before. So lots of things you can get involved with at the U of A and externally also in Edmonton.
Thank you so much, Georgia. That was fantastic. And yes, Bridge to Eng, great plug, great segue. We did actually have a question that will relate to that. So when I bring up that question, you'll certainly be able to share more info there. But any student who has been admitted to the Faculty of Engineering at the U of A and has accepted their offer will be receiving information about our Bridge to Eng program. So keep an eye on your emails for that. With that, I am going to stop sharing my screen briefly so that you can see all of us, and we are going to start the questions period here. So just give me one moment. We've already got some good questions coming in. And so a lot of these questions are related to studying and kind of time management. So does anyone have any tips on time management or how many hours per day or per week do you spend studying? Yeah, we'll start with that.
I can go. So I know for me, like it definitely it's probably not a good thing to say, but I definitely started studying less and less as I got further into my degree. Um, maybe it's just not caring as much, and I probably should be, but I remember my first year. It was a lot of studying. And it truly was. Like, you start your lectures at 8 a.m. and you're lucky to finish by usually 5 p.m. because you have labs from 2 to 5 most of the time. Sometimes you have night labs, 5 to 8 if you're really unlucky. Hopefully you don't. But after 5 p.m., then you're home and you've got maybe 4 to 5 weekly assignments that I'll have to get done. And those weekly assignments, you might not know how to do all of them. So you have to go read textbooks, go look back at lecture notes, go to prof's office hours. Like, oh, this is giving me PTSD now as I'm saying it. I'm like, oh. But you have to go do all that stuff, and then on the weekends, usually you're getting ready for the next week, or you're writing lab reports, so you're studying for midterms. So it's a lot. It's to be honest, it's probably going to be more than you've had in your high school career, and it's going to be something you're going to need to get used to. It's a lot to do, but if you budget your time well, if you make a schedule for yourself, or if you talk to other people in engineering and things like that, do what works best for you, because what works good for someone else might not work well for you. For me, um, making a schedule works really well for me. I just kind of write out what I need to do and I approximate it. I need an hour for this assignment, 2 hours for this lab report. That works well for me. Might not work well for everyone, but that's okay. I remember in my first year, if you're asking for like a weekly, how much time you would spend studying, honestly, probably close to 30, 35 hours. Like you're doing about 4 hours a day and then maybe more on the weekends. It's a lot. It's a lot. So that's my answer.
Yeah, I might piggyback a little bit on what Eric said. Just say that like there's a lot of it definitely is a big time commitment for studying. There are a lot of supports on campus to help with that. Like in my first year, I basically lived part time in the Engineering Student Success Center, which is like a place where you can go for help with your homework assignments. They have like TAs that can help you with things that you're stuck on. So between that and the Decima Robinson Center, which is a place you can go specifically for support with math, yeah, I probably spent like of those, we'll say like 30 hours a week. I probably spent 10 to 15 of them in those specific rooms. But they were awesome. Like between that and then like working with your peers to like see different people's like approaches to things, trying to like explain tough concepts to each other to get stuff down. It's definitely like a team effort in engineering, and that's one of the things like I remember the most. So sort of we're all in it together. It is a lot of work. It can be really hard, but I think the community is really great and supportive in that sense as well.
Those are really robust answers. Thank you. And yes, as Everett mentioned, there are tons of supports on campus that you're able to access as a student. So we're here to support you all the way from your first year to graduation. And just kind of going off of that, we did have a part 2 for that question, and they were wondering, did you still have free time? So were you still able to be involved in things in your first year? For those of you that had involvement in clubs or out of school activities, what if that, were you still able to do those in your first year?
So I'm gonna jump in here because I am a great example of maybe overcommitting to things in first year. But still, like things are doable for sure. So in first year, I was dancing in a dance company, so that was probably taking up 8 hours a week, maybe more, maybe less. I had a part-time job as well, which if you can get away without one, I would recommend maybe not committing because to something to that extent, because I was working about max like two shifts a week, which took up another like 16 hours, right? And then I had like hobbies on the side and I'd want to hang out with my friends. And there's definitely time for that. But you do have to get better at not procrastinating. I would say that my number one recommendation is if you want to have your free time, go for it. That's a super, super big part of maintaining your mental health as well. So I'm a big advocate for that. But make sure you kind of can somehow fight the procrastination bug to some extent, because I found the most success that I've had has come when I look at assignments early. I start things like a week ahead of time if I can, kind of thing. And that's how I've been able to do things on top of my academics. And as proof of that, like been able to increase my GPA every semester because I've gotten better and I've had more experience at managing all of that. And I think it's going to be a learning curve, but everyone can kind of figure it out.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So there are a couple questions here regarding discipline placement. So just to clarify something, at the end of your first year, you're going to receive a ranking form. And on that ranking form, you're going to have to list your first option all the way to your 36th option for traditional and co-op programs that we offer. And then based on your first year GPA relative to other students, you're going to be placed into a discipline. So this placement, it's not a rubric where if you have a 2.7, you're in this program. And if you have a 3.0, you're in this program. It's a 3.2, it's relative to other students. So the higher achieving students will have their form looked at first, and they're more likely to get into that first discipline choice because there are more seats available. So I know that there are some students that are asking, what's the GPA that I need to get into computer engineering? What's the GPA that I need to get into mechanical engineering? And that's not actually something that we're able to track because we have a limited number of seats in all of our different disciplines. And the competitiveness of those programs rely on what discipline is really popular that year, what area students are really hoping to get into, how many students we have, how many seats we have in different disciplines. So we aren't able to release a list of saying, if you have this GPA, you're likely to get into this program, just because that's not how we structure our discipline placement. So I hope that kind of helped understand that portion a little bit more. And typically our co-ops do have a slightly higher GPA than the traditional routes, just because they're a little bit more competitive. More students are interested in co-op. But as you heard from our students today, you don't have to do co-op to have some really cool, unique opportunities. So you've had some questions about, how do I sign up for the racing car club or for any other clubs? How do I get in touch with ESS? How many students do you take a year? So if anyone wants to talk about kind of getting involved in student groups and the how-to, that would be fantastic.
Sure, I can talk a bit about that one. So for me, for every engineering student group does it a little bit differently. So I'll speak on how the computer engineering club does it. And then maybe Ever can talk more about the ESS because that's the big one. But for the computer engineering club, the way we do it is every person who's a computer engineer is like part of the computer engineering club. You can come to our events, and even if you're not a computer engineer, you can come to our events, communicate with us. We have like a club room where you can come, and our doors are always open. We sell food and snacks, advice if you need it, homework help, all that kind of stuff. So it's just like an area for all the engineering clubs and stuff like that. To become part of the computer engineering club, we have little elections in the fall and in the winter. So if you want to become like a junior member, things like helping organize our merch or doing things like being the representative for your year. So like talking to your classes and stuff like that, doing little stand-ups during lecture, stuff like that, and just promoting the events, stuff like that. And then after you've done one term as a junior, you can do a senior. So that's presidents or finance or hack ed stuff or social, run our Instagrams, all that kind of stuff. So it's really fun to get involved. It's really nice because you're with like-minded people who want to be there, who want to contribute to the growth of the club, who want to have fun. Especially during Gear Week, all the clubs get real competitive, and Compy's goal is always to crush electrical engineering, and this year we lost. So sad about it, but it's good that someone at ECE won. So yeah, stuff like that. There's always a good rivalry, but it's all in good fun. So it's great to join.
Yeah, I can maybe speak a little bit to the Engineering Student Society as well. So as far as like how many, I saw there was a question about like how many members are in the ESS. Technically, every undergraduate engineering student is a member of the ESS because we represent, or I guess the ESS represents all undergrads, just the same way as like your high school student council would represent all the students in the high school. But as far as volunteers go, I would put it in the ballpark of somewhere between 150 to 200 volunteers that the ESS typically has at any given time. So if you're looking to get more involved in like student governance and contributing to different aspects of the engineering student community, there is something for you within the ESS. Like I can pretty much guarantee you that. And we don't stop people from holding more than one role if there's multiple things you're interested in. But yeah, there's everything from like, I've been helping design like merch. So like I'm wearing an engineering sweater that like I, reached out to the supplier and I bought 500 of these sweaters that we sold at the gear store in fall. So everything from stuff like that to like Abby, who liaises with like some of the transfer schools, to like people who are helping organize the engineering competition, to, I don't know, I'm trying to think of something else that's very different that the ESS does, and I'm struggling. We have people who put on the engineering art show every year. So there's tons of different ways you can get involved, and it's usually as simple as like looking for a poster and filling out a Google form, and that's how you can get started. And if nothing else, just go talk to people. Everyone's always helpful to have like more hands on deck when it comes to like student clubs and project groups and stuff like that.
I'll also add that there's a website called Bears Den that has just all of the clubs at the university. It's not engineering specific, but you can find them all. And every year there's a general clubs fair for the U of A and an engineering specific clubs fair. So you can kind of see everything there as well.
Perfect, thank you. And just a reminder that if you have a question, just throw it in the Q&A instead of raising hands. That would be great. Thank you. So we have had some questions that I just want to help kind of clarify. So we have co-op and traditional routes for your degrees. So the difference between co-op and traditional is that with a traditional program, you're going to take about 4 years to complete a degree. So that includes your first year, and you have your summers off. So in between May to September, you have that 4-month period. You can travel, you can work in the industry. So like some of our students were going and working with engineering firms during the summer. When you're in co-op, it's a 5-year program, including that first year. And you're going to be doing 20 months of paid work experience. So that means that there are going to be 4 or 8 month time frames where you're not taking classes, you're just working. So you're going to a 9 to 5 or whatever your co-op placement may be, and then you're not taking classes during that time. So you could work with the co-op office, and then they'll be able to, I'll have someone talk about their experience like interviewing for co-op positions, but you'll be able to then work at the co-op office, you'll receive a schedule. So you'll find out when you're in classes, because sometimes you may have classes in the summertime and then you'll work in the fall. So someone just wants to talk briefly about their experience with like getting into co-op, getting a co-op position. That would be great. But for those that are a little bit confused about what that means, I hope that helps kind of clarify some things.
Yeah, I can talk about getting a co-op position. So we have this, it's a platform called Campus Bridge, and it's available to the co-op engineers. And essentially that's kind of where recruiters through their companies associated with the U of A, they'll post their job postings specific for U of A students there. And then you can apply on Campus Bridge with your resume, and you can update your documents to your transcript, your cover letters specific to companies, and then you can feed your documents into the application that you'd like. And from there, you can get your interviews, and it'll all be managed through Campus Bridge. And when you even get to the if you get an offer, you can accept that through Campus Bridge as well. And then they'll make a work term record where they have, okay, here's your company. And then you can have the co-op contact from the U of A. They'll come to you and do an on-site visit while you're doing your work term. And you can write your work term report while you're doing that. And so there are some things that you have to do on your work term that is for the university, for the co-op class that you'll be in, which is just essentially the documentation of you completing that co-op term. So that's kind of how that process works a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you for that. We've had a couple questions about residence and if people would recommend living in residence on campus, or if you found it helpful to make friends, if the Eng cohort floors, if that was something you have experience with. So if anyone who lived in res wants to touch on that.
I can start us off maybe here. I typed a little bit on, and I'll summarize. Coming from like outside of Edmonton, and even more so like outside of the province, I lived in residence in my first year, and it was a very positive experience for me. A lot of like my closest friends that I have at the U of A are people that I met in first year in residence, or that I lived with on the same floor. I actually just like yesterday night went out for dinner with some of my friends that I lived with in residence in my first year. So definitely some really strong connections I made there. Even from like a logistical perspective, first year can be like a lot of work and time spent doing academics, as we said. So like if you're living at home and you have people to support you in that sense, it's great. But if you're coming from out of town, like being able to go to the cafeteria instead of having to like cook dinner for yourself, that is huge. Like that is like honestly one of the biggest advantages of living in residence, especially when you're in first year and you're still sort of like figuring out how to like manage the university workload and find the systems that work best for you. So for people that if it's easy to live at home, it's a very personal decision about whether, the cost is justified or not. But if you're coming from out of town already, I would highly, highly recommend living in residence, at least for your first year.
I'm gonna have to piggyback on that a little bit as well. I lived in residence during the COVID year where everything was online, was my first year. So we only had one tower. Usually there's 5 open. And we only had one tower open that year, and they were the single private rooms where the bathroom, everything is in your dorm, and you don't have any roommates. So that was almost as like isolated as residence could be, and it was still such a positive experience. Like Everett said, going down to the cafeteria after like a midterm goes poorly, but then you go to the cafeteria that everybody's like, okay, no, that midterm wasn't good for anybody. Like that sense of reassurance is huge. Along with things are handled. Like you don't have to, paying tuition, or sorry, paying rent is handled pretty similarly. How do you pay tuition? And so in that sense, things are kind of handled. So it lets you really just focus on academics, engaging in clubs on campus. And it really just immerses you in university. I feel like if you're moving to Edmonton from outside, and you either live alone or you live with one other person, and that's sort of your entire support system, and it's all away from the university, it can lead to a different experience. So yeah, I'm pro residence for first year as well, if you can.
Awesome. Well, thank you both. So we've had some questions regarding first year courses. So kind of what was the most challenging course during first year? What are some of the courses that take more time than others? But also, how did you manage that? What resources did you use to get through those courses? And how did you lean on the supports that were available?
I think most people would probably agree it's math. Math is just non-fun in first year. At least it wasn't for me. It was hard, and you learn a bit of it, like Math 31 and stuff like that, and in grade 12 and all that. Like, it's a good segue. But it's hard. It's hard. I won't sugarcoat that. It's a hard class, and for me, um, I'm usually not a very big textbook person. Um, so a lot of videos helped me. I was just watching a lot of YouTube videos and stuff like that. It's like, I don't know how to do this integration or this derivative. Like, what could I do? And now, I don't know. I haven't tried using ChatGPT for math, but I bet it could maybe kind of sort of help, but I don't know. But videos are usually pretty good. So that's what I would go to.
I'd have to agree with that. I think using your resources, like YouTube or et cetera, like is really, really useful to get through some of those tougher courses. I'm going to be the slightly different side. Math, I didn't find the worst. I don't know why, but my worst course, my least favorite course was Eng 130, which is hilarious. Because like, and I'll tell you, it was a really terrible downfall. I got 100 on the first midterm and somehow came out of that with like a C.
Sorry,
So,
what is End 130?
and okay, sorry. This is for background. Eng 130 is I would call it like the civil engineering course kind of. So it's all about like structures and forces and loadings of different beams. And the first part of it starts out pretty chill, and then we got to a point where we hadn't quite entered the realm of relearning how to do integration in math yet, because that comes in the next math course in the winter term. But I hadn't taken calculus since grade 11. So there was like a gap in my knowledge, and then the downfall ensued. So for that, I think is it Jeff Hansen on YouTube was my like go-to. That was like the best like help, even though it didn't help my grade that much. Like it helped a little bit. And I'm sure you guys could probably do a lot better than I did in that capacity. But another thing, sorry, I'm kind of rambling here, that I would say is for things that don't quite make sense in like one semester, for some reason, if you let things simmer a little bit, they'll kind of sink in, right? So like the next course with that was an extension of that Eng 130 course that I took. Went a lot more smooth just because I had, I think, the experience of being in university. Things kind of sunk in a little bit more, and I had like more math skills to support my understanding. So I would say don't get panicked if the first go through some courses doesn't go necessarily how you want it to go.
And just on that, we've got some questions about like what's the best way that you found to take notes during a lecture? Or what's the best way that you found to like study for your exams? Are you guys typing, or do you prefer to write it out? Just kind of some of those smaller skills. And I did see a question here, are there places to study at the U of A in the evening? Absolutely. All of our buildings are open late. And then sub is actually 24 hours. So as long as you have your one card with you, you can scan it and you can go study there. So if anyone has any tips on, note taking or study skills.
As somebody who's bad at taking notes, I was grateful to learn that most profs will give you notes. So they have PowerPoint lectures or something like that you can annotate as you go, or they have like fill in the blank kind of lectures. There's a couple that don't, but they'll typically post them later anyway. So that's super helpful. You'll find like a couple profs that don't do that. And I think you try and find other people that are also in the class so you can fill in the places that you miss after, is what I typically tend to do. As for studying, I think a lot of the courses are kind of math based, at least in the mechanical side of things. So a lot of practice questions is what you kind of do to try and figure that out. But yeah, if anybody has anything else.
I was a big advocate for the transfer from paper to digital notes, because in my first semester, coming from high school where I would get a handout sheet for, this homework, and I would do it and I would lose it, but it didn't matter because, high school, the workload isn't quite as heavy as it is in engineering. But yeah, I found that my habits for note taking on paper, I wasn't as stringent with organization. So when I went digital, I could just download my professor's slides and I could write along with it, and I could organize it, into a folder of the notes and organize that by the week. And I found that just the organization of where my notes were was so critical for my willingness to take notes, and rather than just listen and lecture. So I found that organization with digital notes was a big step for me.
Yeah, I would like support what Lyndon said there as well. I did my first fall term with paper notes, and I had a binder for every course. And then like 2 weeks into the winter semester, I bought an iPad and like an Apple Pencil, and I have never looked back. That was like the single best purchase I made since I started university. I personally use GoodNotes is my app of choice, but there's a few out there. Oh, getting some support, that's great. But there's a few out there that work for people. And yeah, I like same thing like Lyndon said, the organization, the ability to like search through my handwriting with like a Control F function. Oh my gosh, like once you have that, you can never not have that. So yeah, I'd say like using like a tablet or something to handwrite notes. I highly recommend it because I feel like personally I keep more of the information than if I were just typing it. Just the act of handwriting. I don't know. I think I've read like articles that say that's a thing. I think for me it's a thing that it does help with remembering stuff. But yeah, like the organization of having the digital notes is just incredible. So I would highly recommend that over like using paper. That said, though, I do know people who went their entire degree doing like 90% of their notes on paper, and they did well. So if that really works for you, like by all means, go for it. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But for me personally, that using the iPad was amazing.
And I have seen a couple questions in the Q&A just asking about like computer recommendations or specifics there. I put a link in the chat that leads to our computer and technical requirements for the Faculty of Engineering. And if you have any further questions, you can always send us an email, which I will also put in the chat right now. And you'll be able to send those our way, and we'll make sure that you're all set up for success in your studies. But we're going to transition a bit more into like the specifics of different types of engineering, because we've gotten some questions about, so for biomedical engineering, do you work with potential ways to improve human life with technology without direct interactions with the body? For example, do you work to improve or replace machines like MRI machines or centrifuges? And would you consider there to be a lot of creativity involved with this degree? Would you recommend it to someone who doesn't necessarily consider themselves to be creative? Abby, I'm looking at you for this one.
I think in terms of like the ways of improving human life with and without interactions, I think it is both. It can be both. There's a lot of facets of biomedical engineering, which I think is true to all of the disciplines. There's like more disciplines within the disciplines. But I know like a lot of the work that's being done right now with biomedical engineering would be like 3D printing, like bio tissue. So you're using like human cells to create organs using 3D printing. So it's kind of like the mix and match of all of it. I think some of it is, yes, with like replacing and improving different machinery that already exists. But I also know that some of it comes down to like wound care. So you are directly interacting with the human body. I think maybe that's what I know most about is the wound care aspect of like the direct contact. But there are people that make like different like hydrogels that you can apply to the wounds to make them heal faster and things like that. So I think there's a bit of both. The machine side would be a little bit more, I think, of the mechanical combined with the biomedical, whereas the other would be, I think, more of a straight biomedical. And then I'll scroll because I kind of forget the question. What was the second part again?
Oh, just about would you consider there to be a lot of creativity in this degree?
Yes.
Like, could someone who doesn't consider themselves to be creative still be successful?
I think yes. I think you learn creativity a lot of times, which also sounds a little bit weird. But you learn how to think in a way to design. So you don't necessarily have to have all of the ideas off the top of your head. I think that comes with time. Like as you do more projects, you're gonna think of different ways to solve the problem. So I don't think you necessarily have to be the most creative to do well in mechanical or biomedical. But I think a little bit never hurts, but I don't think it's like essential. I think you kind of develop that with time. Georgia, if you want to add something. I know it said mechanical too. So.
Sorry, I'm going to be terrible. Can you repeat that? Because I was looking through the questions.
Just like, would you consider there to be a lot of creativity in the field? Is that something that someone who isn't creative necessarily could still succeed in? And also, we had a question, what is mechanical engineering? And that's a very fair question.
Such a good question. Mechanical engineering is, I think, it's a really wide discipline. And just firstly to answer that question, to go into creativity, I think like I strongly agree with Abby, where you're being taught how to think in a design forward way. So I wouldn't stress so much about if you as a person haven't come from a background of already knowing that entering university. I think especially because some people come from backgrounds where they're like, I have already made a car at or repaired a car at 15, and that's super impressive. And for me especially, I had no idea anything about mechanics and design and coming into my degree. So I think don't knock it and don't knock it out of your potential options as a career just because you don't necessarily feel comfortable with that idea yet. To kind of direct towards what's mechanical engineering, there's a lot of things that constitutes mechanical engineering, but I think generally what sums it up is we're looking at the mechanics and the governing motions or governing equations of motion for different things in general, right? So you could take anything that moves or has a moving component and break it down into an analysis of the mechanical components, right? There's different facets to mechanical engineering. So there's more the structural side, you're dealing with more rigid bodies. And then there's like fluid dynamics. So you're dealing with maybe piping systems, HVAC, thermodynamics, etc. Mechanical engineering goes heavily into biomedical engineering. They're kind of tied at the U of A together for that reason, right? So there's a lot of things you can do with mechanical engineering degree, I would say.
Awesome. Thank you both so much. Just keeping it kind of in that same vein, we've had a couple questions. First, I'd like to address all the questions about our robotics and mechatronics program. So that is in the final stages of review. We can't guarantee that it will be up and running by the time it's for you, time for you to pick a discipline, but just keep checking the website. And as students, you'll continue to receive updates, and hopefully we will be able to offer that program very shortly. But we have had some questions about what's the difference between computer engineering and computing science, and what is computer engineering?
Um, so yeah, so I'm in software, which is kind of a branch of computer. There's computer, I think there's nano computer, there's standard computer, and then there's software computer. And for the software guys, we also look at designing a little bit of hardware. We'll be looking at the low level stuff where electricity turns into data, where you have the one or the zero. And we'll look at that interface of electricity turning into computing a little bit. But then we'll go to the higher level side where we start writing the software and then the algorithms on top of that knowledge. And that's where we sort of get into computer science. But for the difference between computer science and I think software engineering, that's sort of where computer science is like to software engineering what physics is to mechanical engineering. So we're applied scientists as engineers. So that's sort of a way I like to think about it, where computer science will be a little bit more like algorithm study and discrete mathematics and data analysis and such. So that's one way to think about it. And then on the other branches of computer engineering, that's where they'll look at the creation and design and implementation of low-level stuff where electricity meets data and how CPUs work and designing in that realm. I may have butchered the computer part there a little bit. Eric might be able to touch up on
No,
that.
no, you're good. You guys have a better explanation than I probably would have given. So yeah, exactly. So yeah, the computer engineering side of us, like for me, it's a lot more of the low level, a lot more of the hardware. It's firmware for those of you who might know what that means. So one way that I really like to describe traditional computer engineering to a lot of people is you're kind of the bridge between computing scientists and electrical engineers. Is how do you make electricity from the wall turn into the code that, runs all your programs. So that's kind of what we do. It's a lot of firmware. So it's easy for a computer engineer to speak to an electrical engineer. It's easy for a computer engineer to speak to a software engineer, or computing scientist. It's a really cool mix of both worlds. If you're interested in the hardware as well as the software, it's a cool mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe since we lost Alexis, maybe you want to continue speaking on like what you think, because I think I see the question that she was going off of, about what you feel like the pros and cons of doing software engineering versus doing computer science instead.
That's probably a better question for Lyndon.
Yeah. So there is a big debate about software engineering and computer science. It's the tale as old as time. So with software engineering, yeah, you're applying it a lot more. You're looking at how you write code and how teams write code and what the best way to build an application is, what the best language is to write that application in, and the best database to connect it to, and you're integrating all of these things into what is software engineering. So that's the creation of software, versus where computer science is more so the individual study of, okay, well, here's your linear algebra, here's your calculus, here's your discrete mathematics, your algorithms, and this is what a database is. And you sort of individually look at those concepts in a lot of depth. But software engineering will blend it a little more together, a little bit more. And then I think in terms of APEGA, which is Alberta's Professional Engineering and Geoscientists Association. I think after you graduate, once you, because engineers, all of us will take classes like Eng 404, where we look at risk management and things like that. And that is so that engineers can eventually sign off um, on designs that affect like public safety. And so I think there is a little bit of a distinction who can work on things such as like a pacemaker or something like that actually affects um, like day-to-day life and people's interactions. Like it's critical software. I don't know if computer scientists will be able to work on some projects like that. Sometimes they do need work to be signed off with a PEng. But that's a kind of a niche little caveat there. And then if any other panelists see any questions that they are dying to answer here, I think we can maybe go to those.
Yeah, I'll maybe speak a little bit about generally how I had decided to like choose my discipline, because there was a question about like mechie versus civvy, mechanical engineering versus civil engineering. I sort of had like maybe a different experience than Georgia with Eng 130. I heard like all the people around me, not everyone, but a lot of the people around me really like struggling with and generally like disliking that course when we were working on the assignments. And like I pretty consistently found it like interesting and I enjoyed doing it. So I took that as a sign that maybe I would want to consider civil engineering from like an academic standpoint. Honestly, though, when I started in like my first year, I was planning on going into Mechie. That's what I thought I was going to do. I have like an interest in aerospace engineering. I almost went to Carleton to do that program instead. But then I sort of also always had like an interest in the environment and like environmental protection. And while environmental engineering isn't necessarily protection of the environment, think of it literally as engineering of the environment. It could be positive or negative from the environment's perspective. But that's one of the things that led me to pursue that. And I've been happy with my experiences so far. I've really enjoyed like getting to work on like civil infrastructure and like the sort of larger like systems that a municipality and like a neighborhood or a community would rely on for like their day-to-day needs, like water and wastewater, distribution and collection, respectively. So I think it's a combination of looking at your first year courses and seeing like what interests you in sort of like an academic sense while you're in university, but then also trying to get a gauge of like what professions certain disciplines might work in, and if you have any interest in that sense. I'll also sort of plug at the end of your first year, you'll have the chance to sit in on a presentation from every department on each of the engineering disciplines. We call them first year nights. And that's also how a lot of people sort of like finalize their decisions. And you won't be needing to decide your discipline until that point in time. So I would say like, don't stress too much about like thinking how you're going to make your decision. Just be ready to sort of like take it all in. And by the time you get to that point, you'll have a much better idea of what you might want to do.
Yeah, and just speaking to your first year classes, we are going to be offering registration workshops for students that you can either sign up for or watch a recording, and this will help you register in all of your first year classes. So you'll be getting lots of info for that. Make sure to be checking your emails and we'll be able to help you with that. And there was a question earlier about credits and transfer credit, potentially from AP or IB classes. So the Faculty of Engineering is going to require you to decline those credits for your first year. You'll be reassessed later on, where we can then apply those credits later in your degree and you can receive like a general elective credit or a chemistry credit for it. But in your first year, you have to take all 12 classes in order to not have a penalty towards your GPA for discipline placement. So if you were to accept transfer credit for an AP Chem class, that means you have to take a 200 level chemistry course in order to still meet that weight requirement of the 37 credits at the end of your first year. And that means you're taking upper year courses within your first year, and there could be information that's missing. So even for English, the first year English class, there's still different information that's covered in that course versus like an AP English class. And so that's why we require all of our students to decline their credits in their first year. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to send us an email. But I did see that question earlier. So just wanted to help kind of provide some clarity there. There was a question that I thought was great, and it was, would you describe the culture within engineering as competitive or as collaborative?
I would say there's a bit of both, but there's like an overwhelming sense of community that comes before, I think, the competitive nature. Um, like everyone wants to do well, and everyone wants, especially in first year, to get into their disciplines, but that like never stops the like collaboration and the helping of like your friends to like do better. Because the reality is, your friend is probably going to be a lot better in some course than you are, and you're probably going to be a lot better in another course than your friend is. And it's so much help when you're able to explain a concept to one of your friends and they're able to help you with something else. So I think that's the thing that's kind of struck me about engineering is the community is really, really strong. But for sure, there's definitely a competitive sense. I think if you're coming into engineering, you're probably coming off of a pretty high GPA out of high school as well. So I think people who are of that nature also just tend to be competitive in their own right. But yeah, that's what I would say about that.
Yeah, that was a great answer. Thank you. We have a question about, do you get hands-on experience in every Eng program? What are some ways that you can integrate hands-on experience in your degree?
I can kind of talk about this one a little bit. So in every discipline, you're going to have more and more design projects in your upper year classes. You sort of build the fundamentals in first year, and then second year is kind of the first year of your discipline, and so you're still learning some of the big concepts that you're going to need to later apply. But for example, like every engineer will do a capstone project at the end of their degree, and that is where it's a full course, and your evaluation for the course is based on a semester-long project that you build, and it can get really cool. But even before that, your upper year classes in your third and fourth year, they're all going to have labs where you're building stuff and you're creating and you are getting hands-on stuff. And so it starts to more and more as you progress through your degree.
I'm gonna jump in here as well, kind of with respect to the design courses. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not too familiar with some of the other disciplines, but I know Mechie has design courses starting like right when you get into second year and have picked your discipline. So my first semester of my second year, we were working in the machine shop, building a project throughout like the entire course. Over a semester, and then we got to take that project and kind of compete it against our like other groups in the class. So there are definitely hands-on aspects there, and I'm sure like other disciplines also have kind of similar things going on, but there is some integration right away. And if you're looking for more, I'd say go get involved with clubs for sure.
Great. Well, we are nearing the end of our time. We are finishing up at 7:30. So there are just a couple things that I'd like to let all of our students know about, some important dates that are upcoming, as well as some events. And then, Georgia, if you are up for it right now, do you want to talk a little bit about Bridge to Engineering and what some of our students can look forward to in that program?
For sure. So I'll make it quick so we don't go too far over. But Bridge to Eng programming starts kind of towards the end of the spring semester. So look forward to details coming about that with programming. Specific to the course, though, it occurs over the summer. There's asynchronous and synchronous components. So the asynchronous parts consist of a part called Foundations and then a part called Academic Essentials. Foundations is free for everyone to join. Academic Essentials does have a fee that will be released kind of later in the season, but those are asynchronous throughout the entire summer, so you can look at Foundations for kind of info about the U of A, any things about if you're unsure about what to expect in first year are covered through there. Academic Essentials covers a lot of the basics you should be really, really well familiarized from high school, just to get you pumped up and ready to learn a lot more in your first semester. And then towards the end of the summer, sometime in August, we do have a virtual camp. We've kind of been playing around with, can we do a little bit in person as well? But that's kind of to come. But the virtual camp takes place throughout the days in the summer, kind of towards the last couple weeks of August, and we get you connected with each other. So you get to meet some of the other first year engineering students, and you get to kind of interact with some of the faculty in engineering. So that also comes with a fee. But again, for anyone who does need any financial accommodations, shoot us an email. I think I'll link it in the chat once I'm done here, and we can talk about any accommodations that we can try and make happen for people. So we want this to be super accessible.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And again, if you have been admitted to our Faculty of Engineering, you will receive information about Bridge to Eng. We're going to make sure that you get all of that info. So I'm just going to share my screen real quick as we finish up here. So after you apply, this is kind of specific for students who have applied. Our deadline to apply for the U of A is March 1st. So if you haven't submitted your application yet, but you've been thinking about it, you have to get that in tomorrow. It's a leap year, so you have an extra day to do it. But those applications will be closing on March 1st for the Faculty of Engineering. And if you receive an offer of admission from us before April 1st, you have until May 1st to accept your offer. So you'll be able to accept your offer, see all of the conditions, all of the information in your Launchpad account, which is where you would have applied through. And then continue to check your U of A email for registration information. So in terms of the document deadline, if you're attending high school in Alberta, you've given us permission through your application to automatically pull your transcript. If you haven't, then you'll see information in your Launchpad account about how to send us your official high school transcript. And then if you've met the conditions outlined in your conditional offer of acceptance, then you're good to start in September, which is incredibly exciting. So yes, our registration sessions are going to be coming up very quickly. So our Reg 101 workshops, you can sign up uab.ca/reg101. They're being released March 4th. So if you check out that website, March 4th, there's going to be a ton of resources for you. We also have our Admitted Student Day coming up in March of 2024, so check out your emails for that. And we always have lots of opportunities to get our students involved. And I would like to thank all of our panelists so very much for giving us your time today. You had such great insight. You had such phenomenal information for our students, and we really appreciate you being here. So I'm sure I can speak for everyone when I say thank you. I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure that our participants did too. So with that, I will let everyone go. But thank you so much, and I hope you all have a wonderful evening. Stay warm if you're in Edmonton. It's a little chilly out there. So stay safe, everyone, and have a great evening. Take care.